I hope that above all else on the planet, that people can spell PriSec properly.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 344 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims with HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Kardon. Good afternoon, Donna.
Good afternoon, David.
I would ask how you are, but frankly, my darling, no, I was kidding. How you doing?
Right back at you, buddy. Yep. It's, this new recording schedule, I'm still not sure we've got it worked out, but it's definitely weird.
Yeah. Well, it's, you can record in the morning when you're tired or in the evening when you're tired, but either way,
it's the same.
It's
you're going to get some weirdness.
Yep. So
it's as long as we're used to that and people are listening are used to it. At this point, with 344 episodes, if they're not used to it, there's nothing we can do.
I know. 344. Whew. So today we're going to be talking about Help Me with PriSec.
What the heck is that?
Not Help Me with HIPAA. Help Me with PriSec.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what we're going to dive into. But before we do that, we have our HIPAA
Say what?
segment. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I had an interesting chat with a client. They had a situation with you know how it always goes. Somebody's being nosy, looking at stuff they're not. And, and all the systems worked. And the employee got caught and admitted doing it. And so they were immediately let go for violation of HIPAA. That's one of the ones that reaches that level of, look, I mean, you're flat out doing it on purpose, using someone else's login to look at somebody in the community's records. You knew you were wrong. They knew they were wrong. Everybody knew you were wrong, but bye.
Mm-hmm.
But the question was, okay, notifying the patient. What were the protocols and did they need to do this? And they need to, I was like, you know what? It's not a tiny community they're in, but it's still, this person was looking because they were in the community. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you shouldn't worry about anything that the law says, although you should, do it because the law says it. But really and truly, you need to expedite your normal process because at some point, somebody somewhere is going to hear this happen. They're going to hear the person got let go. They're going to hear the person got let go because they were snooping. They're going to hear that the person got let go because they were snooping. And, it's going to get back to the patient. And you don't want you following your normal protocols to get between your patient finding out that this has happened. And it's just not worth, creating an upset patient. You want that patient to know as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So educating my client on the fact that, this is one of the cases, there are rare cases where it's worth it to pick up the phone and notify the patient that way. Go ahead and do it in writing so you got your documentation and all of that. But it is worth it to pick up the phone and tell the patient what happened. Because that's what you're supposed to do anyway, is do it in writing. You don't even want to risk it taking the time to get there without this patient knowing, because you know that come on, if they were snooping, they somebody that gossips.
Mm-hmm.
So in this little round of HIPAA Say What, yes, HIPAA says you're supposed to notify and you're supposed to do it a certain way, but it also allows you, if you feel that there is a reason for doing it immediately, that you can do it immediately. So that is our educational moment for what HIPAA says for today.
Cool. Yeah, I bet most people don't think about picking up the phone and actually calling
right,
to notify.
You're following the normal protocol, but it is there if you feel that it's urgent enough to go ahead and talk to the patient. you can do that. You don't have to follow your normal formal steps first.
Right.
Go ahead, talk to the patient, and do it in writing so that you got it documented.
Yeah. I was going to say, just to be clear, it doesn't mean you don't do it in writing.
Well, you can make that argument you're doing it in lieu of, but why would you want to do that without documenting what it is you said?
Yeah. I swear I called them.
Mm-hmm.
It'll definitely be a finger pointing fiasco. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, I mean, you hope that it's not a bad situation for the patient is really and truly what you hope.
Mm-hmm.
But, don't let the grapevine get there just because you're following protocols.
Mm-hmm. You're
allowed to go around them.
Cool.
So there you go. There's your HIPAA.
Say what?
There you go.
All right, so let's dive into this PriSec thing because we've talked a lot about PriSec lately. Sort of.
Yeah.
We've mentioned it. And
Right.
there's this little thing coming up in September called the PriSec Boot Camp. So why is this so near and dear to our hearts? And why would we ever take on yet another thing if it weren't that freaking important to us? And so let's dive into this and talk about why it's so important, why we feel like it needs its own separate boot camp, and why people should really, really consider attending the PriSec Boot Camp.
Yeah, well, it's also about let's start talking about privacy and security, not just HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
And, help me with PriSec because, first of all, I was trying to figure out how to not have to say privacy and security over and over and over.
Yeah, we also didn't want a URL that was a mile long.
I know, right? But even just in our conversations, and people ask what we do at Kardon, and the basic answer really is we help people build and manage privacy and security programs.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't know what that is, number one. Excuse me. And secondly, that's a lot of things to say. So
Yeah.
I started saying PriSec, and I look, and in Europe, there are actually PriSec conferences.
Oh, so we're jumping ahead of the curve across the pond.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a term we're going to work with that term until somebody gives me a better term, because it's no longer about HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about HIPAA anymore. We say that all the time. HIPAA is the bare minimum.
Yep.
HIPAA is the compliance rules you use to prove you're doing the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And it does identify the privacy requirements for what you can and cannot do with patient healthcare information, protected health information. Let's just put it that way. It defines what it is, what you can do, yes, but that's the privacy portion of the rule. And so if you just worry about security, you're screwed.
Well, it's also important to point out, because you just touched on it, that not all healthcare information is protected health information. And therefore, some businesses, not that they would ever do this, but some may say, we don't fall under HIPAA and therefore we don't worry about privacy and security, which is a very bad stance to take and still can get you in a lot of trouble with other agencies with other acronyms.
Yes. We just talked about the FTC rules we touched on, coming out. So there's so many things that are HIPAA adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the CCPA and the GDPR and every state is now coming out with all these different rules. And it's just a really big encompassing topic to talk about privacy and security.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next step beyond HIPAA.
That is
really
absolutely the case.
Which is kind of like saying, we're finally getting to where the conversation needs to. Yes, HIPAA is a core element because it defines, for a healthcare perspective, the privacy elements and breach notification elements in healthcare.
Well, it also, for you and I, we always talk about how we don't want to be minimum service providers.
Yep.
Especially me being an MSP, I don't want it to stand for that. And so I'm always looking at how can we do more than what, for example, HIPAA is asking for us to do, because we do know HIPAA is the minimum. Mm-hmm. And, one could argue that we have not yet gotten everybody to do the minimum.
No.
Which is one problem. However, there are some who say, I don't want to just address the minimum. I want to go beyond that. And I want to look at how can we actually have effective privacy and security programs. And again, to mention, some people don't fall under HIPAA. It doesn't apply to them or whatever, but they still want an effective privacy and security program.
Mm-hmm. And for years, HIPAA was like the standard that everybody knew for privacy and security. So it was easy to just say HIPAA.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I started doing this, it was, you said HIPAA. But now, anytime somebody talks to us, they're like, well, can you also help me out with CCPA and make sure we're doing that? Can you also make sure we're doing these other things we're supposed to do? Mm-hmm. And, there's these SOC things required. And, there's high trust. Should we talk about high trust? And should we talk about ISO standards? And then you get all the vetting. If you're a vendor, if you're a business that sells to other businesses, get on board, because that's where we're going. Everything's becoming about PriSec.
Like us IT folks. I'm telling you, if you're in the IT business, you got to really pay attention to this stuff, because your clients are coming to you. And I know this because it do me this way. Your clients are coming to you and they're saying things like, we have this FINRA thing that we need to audit on or answer these questions for. We're getting cyber liability insurance and we need to answer these questions. We have a PCI audit. We need to answer these questions. We're doing business with fill in the blank and they want us to answer these questions. And so, it's coming at us all the time. There's almost a week that doesn't go by that I'm not getting a client sending me a questionnaire saying, we don't know how to fill this out. And which is great, because then I can go back and go, remember these things we talked about and you said you didn't want them?
That's what this is talking about.
Yeah, these things you're saying, this is what you're supposed to have.
Yeah. This is that.
Yep.
Yeah. But that, for years, we've been in this place where, and we've talked about it many times, where the IT company's like, sure, all you got to do is, you run this scan, you do this, it's security risk analysis. And first of all, we hear over and over they're doing that wrong. That you can't get people to do a proper security risk analysis is one of the reasons that OCR does enforcement and says, remember Severino, he's like, I can't get them to do this right. How am I going to go to something else? Yeah. So we know that you're already not doing HIPAA properly in some places, and we're ready to move past that, beyond that, not past it, above and beyond it.
Yeah, it's still going to be there. Yeah. The cool thing is, I hope that above all else on the planet, that people can spell PriSec properly.
Well, plus it takes out all of the crazy, does HIPAA apply? Does it not apply? What is it? We don't go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah. How does it apply? Am I a BA? Am I a CE? Am I a hybrid? Am I a whatever? Yeah. Just get rid of all that. Just do it.
Yeah. So, there are certain people that need to know those things and make those decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And for years, the way HIPAA has been handled, which is probably why we have so many problems with it being handled properly now, is because there would be like, oh, okay, somebody has to be the privacy officer, somebody has to be the security officer. And usually somebody will go, well, I'll do this and you do that.
Yeah.
Or the favorite voluntold thing.
My favorite one is still, and unfortunately it happens too frequently, but my favorite one is when I say or ask, who's your compliance officer or who's your privacy and security officer? Sometimes I ask all three. Depends on the size of the organization. And the response I get is, the doctor is our compliance officer.
Yes.
And I'm like, all right, I can tell you right now, this is not gonna fly. The first time you have any incident at all, you're expecting the doctor to stop what he's doing to now address the incidents that are going on. And they're like, no, that's
and
not
then
what
she
we
comes
expect.
into the room and says, what are we doing? What are you doing? Did anybody call IT?
Yeah. It's just like, no, it's just not going to work.
I've had those uncomfortable conversations before where I have to say, you're really good at treating the patients, but shouldn't somebody else worry about password rules and whether or not you have an incident response plan details? Because that's what you're supposed to worry about if you're the security officer.
Yeah.
It works almost always if you have the proper conversation. Yeah. But the bottom line is getting the training that everybody else gets on HIPAA training, the annual HIPAA training, will not give you the tools, the knowledge, and the skills you need to properly build and manage these privacy and security requirements.
Yeah. The other cool thing about what we're putting together here with the PriSec Boot Camp is it's for non-technical and technical, but separate. Right. Like we're not sitting in the same room and going, all right, for you non-techie folks, just bear with us.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for both types of people, because it's very difficult to have any kind of event where you're taking those people and putting them in the same place and they both feel like they're getting value from it, because one person's saying, I really need to understand what it is I need to be doing, or really they're probably saying, I need to understand what I need to get other people to do. and then the other side of the folks, the technical folks, are saying, okay, great, I understand this is what I need to do, but I really need you to tell me, like, how am I supposed to get this done for myself and or for my client? Because they're two very different things.
And that's exactly one of the things that we have worked so hard to narrow the HIPAA boot camp sessions that we've done. The Help Me with HIPAA has created the need for more training, or at least people would ask us for more training. We're giving it away free every week. This is our 344th time we're giving it away. But what it is making sure that everybody's part of the conversation on why things need to be done is important. Because if everybody doesn't understand the why, then the how and what you get out of the how will not be in the same place as what you intended. Mm-hmm. So that's the big part that we tried to do throughout all, our first HIPAA boot camp years ago. Man, it was a long time ago. It was like 6 years ago, I think. And the first one was 2 days. And it wasn't even really 2 crammed full days. And all we did at the end is go, man, we needed to cover X, Y, and Z, and we don't have time. Mm-hmm. But everybody that came to those loved them. They got tons out of them. They were overwhelmed with the information. But the bottom line is we needed to give you more information. So we extended it to 3 days. And then we still needed to give you more information. And then we extended it to its a prerequisite video course and a quiz before you come to help make sure you have the basics, which most people have been doing. So now we have it so that the training that most people were managing the program with, the only training they were getting is what we call our prerequisite take a quiz and hope you got it training.
That is true. Yeah.
We don't even touch on those things to get you on the same page, to figure out, the terms and understand those. Yeah.
It's like, I love it when people say, yeah, I'm the compliance officer or the HIPAA officer. Sometimes I hear it say, and then they say, yeah, I went through my annual 30-minute training. Oh boy.
Yeah, I got my certificate.
Yeah. Oh boy. Sorry. It's not the way this works.
I always love it when somebody who's supposed to be the HIPAA officer and I'm saying something about, the latest cap on the OCR resolution, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, okay, who's OCR?
I've had that happen and it blows my mind.
Yeah. And it's not their fault.
No.
They have no idea what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They think they've been told, or they do know that there's a lot they don't know, and they've never had the opportunity to get trained on it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're left with listening to our 1 little hour clips of madness. But that's why we started doing the boot camp, is to get that intensive training. We used to offer a course, which is, how you and I met, is we would do every single week, there would be a class and consulting.
Yeah.
And
I think I went through
the
8
6 week,
weeks?
yeah, 8 weeks, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 or 8. I want to think it was 8 weeks, but it may have been 6. But anyway, I went through multiple weeks of training, and there was homework for each one and all this kind of stuff. And then, I remember when you and I were first talking about the boot camp, I'm like, we're going to take this 8 hours worth of content over an 8-week period, and we're going to cram it into 2 days.
Mm-hmm. With the homework.
Yeah, with all that. And it's just a lot.
Yeah. So we know it's a lot, but we try to create that balance because we got a lot of feedback that says, I don't have 8 weeks to figure this out and get it done. So we were trying to help you not be overwhelmed, but that takes too long. So we just had to say, all right, you're going to be overwhelmed no matter what we do.
Yeah, we are not help me with overwhelm. It's help me with HIPAA.
Yes. So that being said, as we've continued to progress and we know more and more information needs to be covered, we need to do more in these sessions. So that's why we're expanding it to 3.5 days. And we also know it has been brutal during COVID to try to do this intensive type of training over video meetings. It's just so hard.
Yeah, it
so brutal. And
if I hear anybody else tell me I'm muted, I'm going to go off.
And that's what a lot of people are like. You're muted. You're muted. But, it's the way we have had to operate, but we never did them virtually. We tried it virtually before and we didn't really like how it worked out. And then we were pushed into the corner where we had no choice. Mm-hmm. And it's time for us to, bite the bullet and say, hopefully we're on the other side of this by September so that we can get that type of intensive training, but we're taking it to the next level. We're bringing in other people besides just us.
Yeah.
So that we can help more people. Mm-hmm. This isn't about, in fact, we do not see it as some sort of big revenue. We're hoping we just break even.
Yeah, we are.
And that
sweating bullets to break even.
I know, right? This one's quite scary. And our partners that we're bringing in that work with us with clients and work with us in the industry, we're being very careful and bringing in people who can talk about what they know. We don't just talk about what we hear that they know or what they tell us that they know. They're there to have those conversations so we can have the ones that we specialize in.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue into what the agenda looks like. So I've had people ask me, okay, I'm interested in the PriSec Boot Camp, but tell me what it covers. And this is something that, you've spent a lot of time figuring out what we're doing, where we're doing it, how we're doing it. So let's go through it. So day one, what we got?
It's a theme for each day, which lets us play with it a little bit. But
do we get to dress differently?
Yeah, we can. And of course, somewhere along the way, we're going to be given a uniform by the boss. Yeah. It
is worth saying that this is casual dress for attendees, and that's my benefit there because I have once forgotten my clothing.
Yes. So what he could buy in the early morning hours at the local Walmart was what he wore.
Exactly. We got all the straight lines still in the shirt from unfolding it out of the wrapper. Like, whatever, man. I have no clothes.
It's one of the many stories that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to start on Monday, the 12th.
Okay.
And you can check in that morning, and the session starts at 1:00. And it's our Scrim Day.
So
Scrim, supply chain risk management. Yeah. Let's just rip that Band-Aid right on off and talk about why everybody has to understand how the supply chain works today.
Yeah. Because some people, like me, I'm not only dealing with supply chain, I'm part of the supply chain. Exactly.
And at some point, we all operate in the supply chain of healthcare, especially complicated, because you don't realize how intertwined it is and how many different pieces and parts exist. So we are going to start there as far as our first real hard topic and dive into what the BAs need to understand, what the CEs understand. What are the ones that are outside the BA and the CE that are now getting sucked into it? What do they got to do? Because there are some variables where we have clients that are completely outside of HIPAA, and then we have some that are HIPAA adjacent. They know that they eventually will cross over that line because they're running along it so close that if they add like one more service, it'll require them to take insurance, or that's where they want to go next, or the next, they want to expand their client base. That's going to bring them in as a BA. So we know all of that, but we're going to account for all of those and explain how you figure out who's who and where everybody fits and why do we do risk management day. We're going to cover HICSCRIM and some of those topics. Because, if we can't use the HC3 stuff, we're clearly not paying attention in our 405D classes.
And plus, anything you can be involved in that starts with HIC, you're there.
I know. I'm in. So, but everything along the way is there's going to be a why you need to know this, and then sessions on how to go do it. Sometimes they'll be in the same sessions, the same course areas. Sometimes they'll be broken apart. And so sometimes they'll be, this is the administrative part, this is the more technical part, and those will go simultaneously. And that's, a big reason that you have a privacy officer and a security officer, because there are different things to worry about. So Scrim Day is Monday afternoon, where we talk about all those things about figuring out your supply chain, vendor selection, vetting, contract management, all the new negotiation things that are going on, all of those questions, we're covering those and from 1 till we're done. We're trying to say we're going to be done at 5 or 5:30, but we all know what happens, and you can continue having conversations. So that's day number 1. It's a half day. We kind of get you started so that we could come at it hard on day 2, which is you got to prove it day. Which we're going to start opening it up with what kind of questions will you have to answer if you're investigated by OCR? What kind of questions are people having to answer as part of new business partnerships, or their cyber insurance coverage, or the state's attorney general? We're seeing this where even, hey, you have this great new business opportunity and we want to bring you all these patients, but you've got to prove to us that you're doing all these things, and we're going to hold until you can prove it.
Yeah. And this is one of the sessions we used to do near the end. We would talk about the OCR questions. And I think it was the last HIPAA boot camp we did. Somebody said, you should really lead with this because the questions they ask blow my mind.
And so, we're going to go and start with that. We're going to lead with that and have a good deep dive into it. And then we're going to get into splitting it out between the privacy requirements for covered entities versus business associates. They both need to understand the why of privacy, because without privacy, it's not so clear what you're supposed to do under the security rule
when
it comes to HIPAA. So you got to know which parts HIPAA applies to and those rules for privacy and those rules for breach notification. But outside that, you may have PII, which falls outside of HIPAA, but not outside necessarily of state requirements. So knowing how to draw that line and what to do. And if you're a covered entity, we're going to give you a deep dive on what you should know about patient right of access enforcement, because that is the big ticket item. So we're going to make sure you talk about those. We're going to talk about the importance of written policies and procedures. We're going to try to do a live version of a tool that we use, but developing them, why you need them, and how you go about building policies and procedures and a documentation program. And then how do you audit those? Why do you need the audits? Do you audit policies and procedures? What about security logs? What about a training program and communicating information to management? And then we're also going to bring in our OCR investigator to finish that day off and answer questions. You don't see that because I've decided I'm moving it. So we open with that and we close with that. It makes more sense to do it that day. And then we finish that day with Bourbon and Breaches happy hour, the premier event, and Q&A, where we will be pairing a bourbon with a very juicy breach story. And if you're not a brown water person, we'll have alternatives for you. Whether they be adult beverages or not, we'll have plenty of alternatives to follow the theme so that we can have fun with it. That should then round out the You Got to Prove It day with why we keep pounding that in. It's really cramming in a lot, we know. But hey, that's why it's a boot camp. And then the next day is your favorite.
Yeah, Risky Business Day. Yeah, I'm going to come sliding in my underwear with a shirt.
Well, you'll at least have a white shirt on. And the tidy whities with your Wayfarers.
There you go.
There you go. But we'll be doing something, for the theme. Risky Business Day. Vendor, it's not just we start with vendor risk management, but now this is risk management, business risk management. We're hoping to get all of these pieces in place where we can have a panel discussion about real live. Here's what the CEO thought during a data breach, a cyber attack. The CEO is going to be there to answer questions and talk about it. This is what the forensics people did, the IT people, me, the breach coach, the PR person. We're going to try to get as many people that were involved in a particular story there so we can tell that story and bring in other stories that go along with, because I got this idea when the CEO of someone that went through an attack said to me, I had no idea until I'd been through a big one what it really entailed and all the things you think you're ready. So we're putting all of that together. We're going to talk about why you do a security risk analysis and doing the risk analysis, the how of that, as well as the business decisions that are involved and risk management training, and then bringing in IT to address all of those things. And that cybersecurity is everyone's job.
Yeah. Amen. Preach it.
But then, of course, we're going to cover 405D topics and the importance of understanding the recognized security practices. We'll see if we don't know if we're going to be able to bring in some HHS folks. We're going to try, but we definitely have some of the other vendors that are joining us from Comply Assistant and Sphere. And we got Jen Stone, who's coming from Security Metrics, who's going to talk about NIST and PCI and high trust with all the folks that have to worry about that stuff. And, we've got Black Talon, our forensics folks, to talk about their stuff, which is going to come into play on the next day. But plenty to cover that day, just talking about the concepts behind risk management. which that whole day is the day where you're really talking about security and how much of an impact it has.
And then the last day, after all the preparation, we still know that if something's going to go wrong, it will. And so we're going to have Murphy's Law Day.
And Murphy, the hippopotamus, will be featured greatly.
Yep.
And we're really going to talk about what IT has to worry about under privacy and security concerns for IT. It's a bigger picture than just policies and procedures and making decisions along the way. And we're trying. We don't know for sure. Again, this is still our draft. We haven't finalized it. But we're hoping to actually do a ransomware tabletop exercise and a review of all the different roles, how they did in the tabletop exercise.
Yeah, I'm so hoping we pull that off. That's going to be so much fun.
I am juiced about that. Because guess what? You need to know this. You need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move into the next steps of creating a culture of compliance by having the proper leadership at administrative levels as well as technical levels. And then to close everything out, we want to help you have action plans. So we're going to have things for you to review with you and then give you the time to discuss with us what you need to worry about and what ideas you need and how to work out a plan and decide between priorities. And then I'm planning on having a big after party. My voice will probably be gone, but I'll still be after partying.
Yeah. At the end of this, if it's anything like the other boot camps we've done, at the end of this, everybody's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the fire hose is now off. I can breathe.
Yeah.
But now I've got a year's worth of work to do.
Yeah.
So
I at least started to know how much I don't know is what a lot of people say.
Well, from the standpoint of IT, that's the business I'm in, getting my clients to something like this would be tremendously helpful.
Right.
Getting my prospects even to something like this would be tremendously helpful, because this is going to, give a lot more credence to what I am telling them they need to do. It's not just, oh, this is what David says is a great idea. They're going to hear it over and over and over and over from other people. So it's going to be fantastic.
Real stories, why it matters, how you have to use it, why you want to do it. And there's going to be a lot of great conversation with bringing in the guys from Comply Assistant where they can share their stories and, why do they exist? Because you have to do these things. Let's talk about the things that they do and why they exist. Sphere, why do they exist? What is it that they do that's so important? And let's talk about their expertise. And they're going to be able to bring all of this in, and they're partners. We're not talking about a conference where you have an exhibit hall and you go get a sticker. This is a real intensive and immersive point, even for our partners that we're bringing in, where they're going to be participating in the discussions throughout the days that we're all together. And we'll have this open channel for whoever may know the answer to the question. We're going to have a ton of people there. So we've got Black Talon working with us. They're committed to being there. Sphere, Comply Assistant, Security Metrics, all of those guys are committed to participating. And we got a couple more we're waiting to hear from to bring in some additional know-how so that it's not just us you're hearing from all the time, that, we have to be the ones in charge. But after that, have at it. But we got a contained environment with a limited seating so that we can have that immersing experience at the Hyatt Regency Louisville. So September 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, we're going to explain the best we can why it needs to be more about PriSec than just HIPAA.
It's going to be exciting. I'm ready.
I know. I get excited talking about it. And the people that we've talked to about it, they get excited hearing about it because, and I tell Jen Stone, it's her fault that we're doing this because she sent me this message that said, I've been at HIMSS, I've been at this, and nobody's really covering these kinds of topics where you actually learn the stuff. And I was like, well, that's what our boot camp is, but it would need to be bigger.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have that same problem in the IT field. We go to these fantastic conferences and there's a lot of information about you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. But then you leave there going, okay, great. But how do I do it? And usually that's selling points for people, right? Like you got to do all this stuff, but you got to pay us to do it.
Yeah. And we can give you as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. And you and I have always we've always come at things from the standpoint of we would rather the attendees, for example, learn how to do these things, not try to outsource things to somebody else, because a lot of this stuff you can't really outsource and get it done properly. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do. That's what some vendors are out there trying to say they can do that. I just don't see it. Don't see it happening. And I don't want to be that type of business.
You can't call it part of your culture if it's not being run by people in the company.
We're outsourcing our culture. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But if you want to know more about it, find us at PriSecBootCamp.com. That's PRISEC bootcamp.com. All the information is there. If you want to register, do so. As Donna mentioned, very limited seating. We expect it to sell out quickly. There are early bird specials happening right now, so you definitely want to buy sooner than later. And if you're a member of the Kardon Club or HIPAA for MSPs, you get a killer deal. Yeah. So go check that out. And if you're not members of those two and you want to learn more, there's links there to both the Kardon Club information and HIPAA for MSPs information. So check that out. Everything's at the website, PriSecBootCamp.com.
Well, I'm sure that somebody will have a question that's not there.
I'm sure they will.
They have multiple ways to reach us, as always. Mm-hmm. But the big thing that we want people to understand is you don't have to learn this stuff from us, but you got to learn it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you'll learn it the hard way.
Yeah. Or you'll learn that you needed to learn it when everything goes horribly awry. And we're going to continue to add to this. We're bringing in plenty of official experts that can augment what we're saying with additional details. Like we've done before with bringing in Allison, our OCR investigator. She's great fun, and we love to torture her. So it'll be great to bring in other people where we can put them on the spot and create that environment where you feel like you can truly ask any question. And there should be a way to get you an answer. And that's our intent. And there's a lot of stuff that with this stuff, you kind of have to say it's a fact-specific determination. Mm-hmm. We're used to hearing that. But this is 3.5 days, and there are people who have come to our boot camps before and said they didn't care about privacy and security at all, and then changed, like, that is my goal to start working in that. Like, make that my full-time job.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is when you get done, you're going to look back at people who say they do this 30-minute training every year, and you're going to laugh. Because you're going to say, I went through 3.5 days of privacy and security training, and I still feel like there's more. So for these people that are just doing this 30-minute once a year thing, even if you do a full day once a year, it's almost like come on. You can't create a culture of anything doing it once a year.
Yeah, so find a way to get this training done somehow, because we develop everything based on there being a need, and then we figure out how to fix it. We don't say, hey, y'all, come do this.
Yeah.
We tried that. It didn't work. There is a need, and we know it, and I'm really looking forward to putting all this together and seeing how it works out. And I appreciate anybody that's going to help us and provide assistance in this matter.
Mm-hmm. It helps everybody. The more people that can understand this, the better protected we are in the business world.
And ourselves as patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alrighty then.
All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the PriSec Boot Camp. I'm sure of it. So until then, catch us next week for another great episode. And remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.